No sleep in Morgantown, baby, as West Virginia continues to work the transfer portal, continues to announce coaching staff additions as they prepare for the Rich Rod era to kick off in the 2025 season. What is up? This is episode 23, the Michael Jordan edition of the Golden Blue Breakdown Show. This is Couz. I'm here with my co-host, Jonathan. Jonathan, what's up, man?
Couz, it's always good to be with you, man. It's a busy time in Morgantown. We're hiring coaches. We're taking commitments. A lot going on.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of these guys. Before we do, though, I got to give a shout out to my sponsor. So everybody, we will be right back. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. Thank you for being patient, sticking around, letting us take care of the housekeeping. We're going to start off by talking about some transfer portal updates. Then we're going to talk about some coaching updates. And then we'll talk a little bit of West Virginia hoops to close out the show because it is basketball season and West Virginia is coming off a disappointing loss to Arizona that Jonathan and I will get into here a little bit later. But first, let's go ahead and pull up some or start discussing, I should say, some of these transfers. I don't think, Jonathan, you and I have done a show together since they added wide receiver Cam Vaughn from Jacksonville State. What are your thoughts about Cam Vaughn?
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of the one I think that really moved the needle for a lot of folks who were looking for that acquisition, if you will, to kind of get a little bit of excitement into that offense. Cam Vaughn is someone, whenever Hudson Clement decided to enter the portal, that seemed to kind of break a lot of hearts throughout Mountaineer Nation. This doesn't completely take that away, but it definitely softens the blow a little bit. Cam Vaughn is somebody that was extremely sought after in the portal. The good news here with West Virginia, and this is going to be a theme that we'll discuss throughout a couple more of these players, is that the learning curve coming into next year is relatively minimal because he comes from Jacksonville State. Familiar with Rich Rodriguez, familiar with some of the members on the staff, the offense. It seemed that so far West Virginia has addressed wide receivers, but most of those coups were smaller receivers, maybe some slot guys. So Cam Vaughn definitely gives you that bigger presence, a little taller, a little stronger. And so, here's what Cam Vaughn does for me. Number one, I think it gives you potentially, it's early, potentially, it gives you that guy. And I don't know if you'll agree with me or not on this, but I think it gives you the potential there to have that number one receiver. And when you look back at West Virginia the last, 3 or 4 years maybe, West Virginia they've had a good mix, but they've really lacked that go-to number one, who the clear-cut number one receiver is. And Cam Vaughn, to me, is somebody that will come in and has the talent, the skill set to solidify himself potentially, knowing the offense as a number one receiver. He's that good. And so excited about what he brings. And again, it should be an easier transition coming from Jacksonville State. So he is definitely one that I think a lot of people, including myself, are really excited about because of every bit of the skill set that he brings to the table. I think he can be, in this offense in the Big 12 Conference, I think he can be one of not just a top target, but I think he can be one of the top receivers in the entire Big 12 next year.
A lot of people have been concerned, myself included in this to a degree, have been concerned about the lack of Power 4 talent that this staff's bringing in.
Yeah.
But I think one thing you have to look at, though, outside of just who they played for, is what teams are looking at them. And like you said, there were a lot of schools, a lot of Power 4 schools looking at Cam Vaughn. He actually made several visits. So
Yep.
I think that is something you have to take into consideration, not just where the young man played, but what other schools are interested in him. If you have a lot of Power 4 schools interested in somebody, then I think that it's kind of like when you're looking at high school recruiting. I don't think it's much different. When you see a list of a bunch of Power 4 schools that are recruiting him, he's probably pretty good, and I think that kind of goes the same here.
Yeah, and like I said, it softens that blow of losing Hudson Clement. Here's the thing: when you kind of look at the group of receivers, and I would even say this across any unit, any room, whether it be receivers, tight ends, offensive lines, running backs, whatever, and you just look at the names on there. Cam Vaughn is one of those where they just look different with his name kind of written in. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like you automatically feel that much better about that group when you see Cam Vaughn written in. He's just that kind of a guy. He's that type of player. Somebody's going to be able to stretch the field. He's still got some speed. And again, I completely agree with you. One of the things when you look at the portal is it's not where they came from. It's not where they came from. It's once they get in, who's looking to get them. And you're completely right on that. And West Virginia, I would go out on a limb and say that Rich Rodriguez probably felt pretty good. Even though after he visited, I think Cam Vaughn continued to visit other places. So he rolled the dice a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Rich Rodriguez did. Obviously felt pretty good about it. And so he's one of those that if you're a fan of West Virginia, and I'm assuming you are, if you're watching this, you should be really excited about him signing with West Virginia.
Yep, agreed. A couple other names I'll throw at you and get your thoughts on. Johnny Pascuzzi from Iowa, the tight end, big tight end from Iowa.
Love the name.
What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I was joking with somebody on X the other day that we've got to arrange a Clarksburg, Fairmont, Italian NIL deal somewhere with this young man.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just screams NIL somewhere. Well, first off, my initial thought was if I wanted a run blocking power tight end, I think probably I would be one of my top 3 choices of programs where I'd prefer him to come from.
Yep.
And there's a couple reasons for that. Because number one, I know he's coachable, right?
Yep.
Because I was always they've always had good players and good people in that program for years. That's number one. Number two, I know he's been developed. And number three, they do something really well at Iowa. And I think it's one of the reasons why they've never recruited at such a high level, but they've performed at a relatively high level, is that players they know their role and they accept it and they kind of develop that craft, if you will. And so I think what Rich Rodriguez did here with him is I don't think he thought he was going to go out and be a Colt Taylor that West Virginia had last year. He's not looking to be a 400 or 500 yard receiving tight end. I think he got him specifically for a reason, and that is to run block. That's to add protection. He's a big body. And so when you look at where he came from versus the scheme that Rodriguez is going to run at West Virginia, he screams perfect fit for what you see here. And if you'll look at the portal, what Rich Rod has done at multiple positions, but especially at tight end already, he's kind of gotten players that have that certain little niche, what they're good at. And he fits that role there of a good blocker. And so just somebody that has been coached well, is coachable, and is pretty good at his specific craft, and is going to be okay in that role.
And he's the second tight end that they've signed. The Barrick kid that came from Jacksonville State, actually. He was from Martinsburg, has also signed, I believe.
And again, another one who's not going to go out and catch, 30, 40 passes or even 20 passes likely. But he's going to know his assignment. He's going to know his role, coachable, hard edge, if you will. And all these intricacies are going to work in a certain way, if you will, that Rich Rodriguez knows what he's doing and is putting certain players with certain skill sets in certain places for it to all work. And this could kind of fly under the radar a little bit, but just another piece moving in the right direction, I think.
Agreed. Speaking of tight ends, we'll go ahead and this young man hasn't signed or committed as far as I know, but they are getting a visit from Donovan Green, a tight end out of Texas A&M. Not sure. Maybe the quarterback is helping get him there. I'm not Mr. Jalen Henderson. I was trying to see if he had any stats from last year, but I don't see any really. I don't think he caught any passes. He did play some snaps though. I looked him up on Pro Football Focus, and
I think while you're looking that up, Couz,
yep.
I'll say one thing about him. I think he battled a little bit of injuries, but
he
B,
did. Yep.
He's going to be, from what I've seen, is kind of the opposite of what they've looked for. He's going to be more of an athletic version. I think he's going to be more of that pass catcher, that more over the middle type. So again, just kind of fits into the description of what we're talking about. Somebody that is going to have a same position, but a different role inside that position.
Yeah. He actually missed the entire 2023 season.
Yeah.
Played in 24, had an offensive grade of 54.8, a receiving grade of 50.5, and a run block grade of 67.1. So not too bad on the run blocking, but and most of his snaps were played on the line. He did play a few snaps in the slot and even one snap out wide, but not a ton of snaps. Played some on special teams, but like you said, he's big. He's 6'4", 265 pounds. He's only a sophomore, so he still has 3 years of eligibility left, which is good. So, or 2 years anyway. Well, probably be 3 with this new rule that's getting ready to come down the pipeline. But
yeah,
I guess he played in 22, redshirted 23, and played in 24. So, looks like he might have 2, maybe 3 years left, depending on the eligibility rules. But, looking back, I was trying to remember the last tight end in a Rich Rod offense that caught a lot of passes. Do you remember? I don't remember having any, really.
No, I mean, we're going to kind of show our age or our memory if we do this. You know what? That's something that I'm going to go back and look at. You've given me a homework assignment. But I feel like me and you with our heads together, if there was that one that just kind of jumped out, we would remember that. I don't. But it's been more of that interior and perimeter blocking tight end. For what, he's going to run a lot of inside quick routes, out wide out, quick routes. And so you've got to be pretty agile, but you've also got to be able to block. And so again, just strategic in who he's looking for at that position. And they all kind of have that similarity, if you will, about them.
Yeah. And going back to guys who have actually committed or signed, another Power 4 player is Ashton Woods, linebacker from North Carolina. Not a whole lot of hype around this one, but young man didn't play any in 24, but he was a true freshman and did battle some injuries from what I've been told. Got banged up some. I think they had pretty high expectations for him in Chapel Hill, but because of him getting banged up some, he wasn't able to play like they anticipated. But I think he has a very high upside. And, with Zach Alley coming over, I'm sure it's a player that he wanted to bring into his system. So I'm excited about it. And, it's a room that needs bodies. They need depth. Trey Lathan, it was announced today or yesterday, I guess he's going to Kansas. Josiah Trotter's already left, and he's going to Missouri. So they've lost their 2 starters from the linebacker room. Still have, as of now, at least Ben Cutter and Reed Carrico are coming back, but you can't play with you got to have more than 3 linebackers. So what are your thoughts on Ashton Woods, the Ashton Woods pickup? Do you think it's a good one?
Yeah, I think it's a good one. I would say a couple things. Number one, it's ironic that you just mentioned Reed Carrico because I kind of see a lot here in Ashton Woods that I do maybe in Reed Carrico. And here's what I mean by that. It's not that they're the same exact player, but it kind of leads into what my second point is, that with this portal, you see a lot of guys that were semi and or highly recruited that go to some bigger schools, but for whatever the reasons, injuries, depth charts, whatever, they don't play as much. And so when they hit the portal, it's easy on one hand to say, this guy's stats, special teams, maybe a couple tackles, he's not all that good. But you don't know what that depth chart was like. You don't know what the injuries were like. And I would say Reed Carrico turned out pretty well at West Virginia last year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, at this time, whenever they took his commitment from Ohio State, it would have been easy to say, well, he never played at Ohio State. His numbers were low. And so I would just probably say it's just ironic that you're mentioning Reed, and then this is a linebacker from another bigger, not Ohio State level, but bigger program. I'd be careful to the people out there because I hear it on social media. This guy's stats are terrible. This guy never played. You don't quite know about the full story, and
right.
You don't follow that program over there as much. So I like his upside. Big, strong, has a big body. And like you said, that's a room that needs filling if he's filled. And so I like it. You've got to trust this staff's evaluation that they're getting players that are going to be tough and they're going to want to play hard. They're going to be coachable. And so I like that pickup. I think that's somebody that you can get in and develop in the program for sure.
Yep. Agreed. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about the three players that committed today. Actually, we're recording this on Wednesday, January 8th. There were three commitments and or signees today. I'm not sure how many of these guys have actually signed and how many are just verbal. But we had Derek Carter, a cornerback from Jacksonville State, Fred Perry, a safety from Jacksonville State, and Jordan Walker, cool last name, by the way, a safety from UT-Chattanooga, an FCS program.
Yeah.
So go ahead. To me, the big name out of that group is Fred Perry. I know most Mountaineer fans remember a guy by the name of Carl Joseph.
Yeah.
This guy might be, I'm not going to compare him to Carl Joseph, but he might be the biggest hitter we've had. Well, I don't know. Kaiser White fit that mold too. I would say he's the best hitter we've had since Kaiser White, or has the potential to be.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Fred Perry, man? I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I joked earlier, hard edge. Fred Perry's hard edge.
You got that right. All you got to do is turn on a couple highlights.
Yeah, and I think if you go to his profile on X, there's a video there, and you're about 4 seconds in, and you say, okay, he means business. So Fred Perry, 2024 first team All Conference USA, 5'11", 200, 205. So he kind of fits that Carl Joseph, right? I mean, he's just got the physique and plays with that physicality. Here's going to be a common theme that you're going to see amongst these three guys. Over 1,900 snaps played, veteran. And so the other one, Derek Carter and Fred Perry, they do two things. We talked about this on the offensive side. Now we're going to transition over to football, or on the defensive side. They know the scheme pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Zach Alley's coming over, but I can't imagine they're going to just go completely different. And, because of Alley's going to kind of run that same thing. Rich Rodriguez and him were together before. So they're going to know the vast majority of that scheme. So that transition, here's what I'll say overall, and then we'll kind of talk about them specifically, I guess, a little bit more. But we knew going into the offseason that the one area that needed a complete overhaul was the defensive side of the ball. You should be really ecstatic about these three additions, because these are guys that you can immediately plug in next season. And they'll be contributors. And so if for a unit, a defensive unit that needed overhauled, these guys get it done. So, so just a good acquisition. And I don't know if you have any numbers on him, but 110 tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, I think it was. Even came up and got a couple sacks, 3 or 4 sacks. Just a big physical body that's going to bring a lot of excitement to Morgantown.
Yep. And he's versatile. I mean, he played, and I'm looking at his PFF stuff right now. He played a total of over 700 snaps. I had his total in front of me a minute ago, but anyway, it was over 700 snaps. 361 of those snaps were played in the box. 239 he played at the slot corner spot or the nickel. And then he played 136 snaps at free safety. So, and he even had 35 D-line snaps coming off the edge as a rusher. So, and I'm looking here at his PFF grades over the last 3 years. And let's just look at 2024 since that's the most recent. His overall defensive grade doesn't wow you at 64.5, but it's not terrible.
Yeah.
But if you look back to previous year, in 23, it was actually 70.7. And in 22, it was 73.8.
Yeah.
So he's put together a good career. And then when you look, here's what I love about it. Pass rush grade, 72.7, 27th in the country among all safeties. Out of 153 safeties, he's 27th. Run defense grade, it's even better. Out of 885 safeties with a run defense grade, he's 35th, 86.3. So
wow,
he's an elite run stopper. He's really good at rushing the passer. The one area he struggles in a little bit is coverage. He's not a great coverage guy, but I don't think that's what they're going to use him for. That's not what – this is a guy they're picking him up to create havoc in the backfield and to just flat out hit people.
Yep.
I mean, let's be honest. And to help stop the run. He's not going to be a guy – yes, he'll have to play some coverage, I'm sure, but it's not going to be his primary responsibility. And I'm really excited about this pickup. And according to, it looks like he only has 1 year of eligibility remaining. But like you said, the experience factor to me plays a huge role here.
Yep. Yeah. And you're looking for guys that come in and are able to give that immediate transformation, right? I mean, you can't go on these guys that are true freshmen or whatever. These are guys with experience. All three of these guys we're going to talk about. Experience, and that's what they're looking for going into next year to fix a unit that, quite frankly, needed fixed.
Yeah. And Derek Carter, I was going to pull up his too here real quick. He's 66.3 defensive grade, 75.2 run defense grade, and 63.3 in coverage grade. Now, one thing I've heard about Zach Alley is his defenses are always really good at stopping the run.
Yep.
And when you look at the run defense grades of these players he's bringing in, I think it kind of shows you. And look, I always like to lay out this caveat: Pro Football Focus is not the end all be all. I get it, but it's one of the most highly respected analytical tools out there to show how well a player did in certain areas. And even though it's not 100% all the time, and it doesn't always align with the statistics necessarily, the regular statistics that you see on the field, but like tackles and sacks and all that. But I think it gives you an idea, of what pro scouts, how pro scouts view guys and just scouts in general view guys. So you're getting two talented players here. And like you said, both of those Jacksonville State players have played a ton of snaps. So
yeah, and he was 2023 Conference USA, All Conference USA, 88 career tackles. And I think with him and Fred Perry, one thing you're going to get on top of the familiarity with the scheme is they're familiar with each other, right? They've been in that backfield together. So it's hopefully going to make that transition a little easier for them. But a couple guys, and you noted it, that's going to be able to – they're really good at stopping the run. They're going to play physical. And so, yeah, again, not to sound redundant, but – for a unit that need overhaul, these are two, and there's one more that you should be really excited about.
Yeah. This one,
I know you're going to love this one if you're into PFF grades.
Yeah, some fans, I shouldn't say because I'm a fan too, but some fans are not going to like this one because of the school he came from. Again, it goes back to that. Jordan Walker from UT-Chattanooga. You know, I'm trying to pull his numbers up here.
But it began real quick while you're doing that.
Do that.
Don't look where he came from.
Yep.
Look at who was wanting. West Virginia obviously involved, and there was some talk that Virginia Tech pursued him really, really hard. So, that's another program that, while we're not huge Hokie fans on the program here, or as Pat McAfee says, program, we're not huge fans of the Hokies here. But I don't look at them as lower level competition when we're going after a recruit. So, you're gonna love this guy. And I'm just gonna kind of, because there's a lot to like here. So I actually kind of highlighted this.
Yeah, go for it.
60 tackles last year, 7 pass breakups, and 4 tackles for a loss. This one really jumped out at me. Over 2,000 career snaps.
Wow.
So you go to a Fred Perry, almost 2,000, 1,900, I think it was, snaps. Derek Carter, over 1,000. Jordan Walker, almost 2,000, or over 2,000 career snaps. These are 3 guys that are familiar with playing time, competition, snaps. So really like him, and I don't want to necessarily give away your PFF grade for Jordan Walker.
Right.
But it was pretty dang good.
Yeah. I was having trouble finding it because I kept looking at the wrong daggone position. I was looking at corner. He's actually a safety. But a lot of green. And for anybody that don't know, green on PFF is good.
Really good.
Defensive grade, 75.6. Run defense grade, 76.9. Pass rush grade, 70.9. Coverage grade, 72.1.
Yeah.
And 402 of his snaps out of 749 were pass coverage snaps. So he's 6 foot tall, so he's got some size to him a little bit. Not huge, but, he's not 5'10". And then 188 pounds, so he's got the size. And I look, it might take this young man a few games to get adjusted to the speed of it, right? Sometimes it does. These guys are moving up from the lower levels, especially the FCS guys. But he's got talent. I mean, he can play. And I think, again, I trust Rich Rod. I trust the staff to bring in the right kind of guys. And, we've got to trust their judgment here on this one. And Jordan Walker, to me, is a good pickup here.
Yeah, very good pickup. And let's just say this. This team and this defense is better today because of these 3 players than they were yesterday. Let's just put it like that. They're going to be coached well. And they fit. You kept talking when you were reading these PFF grades, run defense, really high. It's not that their coverage is bad, but run defense. So you can kind of get a sense for what they're looking to do. And one thing that comes along with being really good at run defense is you're not afraid to hit somebody. Yep. You're not scared to be physical. And when you look at Fred Perry, 5'11", 200, 205. You look at a Jordan Walker, 6 foot 190. These are guys that have the size to play physical. And with Zach Alley at the helm, you feel pretty good about their progression next season.
Yep. And his in 2023, his overall grade was 73.7. It's 14th out of 850 safeties.
I'll take it.
That graded out in that category. Unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah, I'll take that.
Me too. All right. So good pickups in the portal. Something I want to ask you about, though, Jonathan, before we move on to I'm just going to list off a few guys who's supposed to be visiting this week, but we won't spend a ton of time on them. But what are your thoughts on, I've been chatting with some people on X about this. We lose Hudson Clement to a Big Ten school, right? We lose C.J. Donaldson to not only a Big Ten school, but the unintended, the Big Ten school in Ohio State. Michigan fans might be mad at me now, but I couldn't pass that opportunity up. We've now lost Aiden Garnes to Arizona, another power conference school. We lost Trey Lathan to Kansas, Josiah Trotter and somebody
Johnny
else to
Williams.
Missouri. Johnny Williams
Johnny
to
Williams.
Missouri. We've lost 2 other offensive linemen to Virginia Tech. Actually, 3, counting Lucas Austin. And we've lost Traylon Ray is now going to Ole Miss. An SEC school coached by Lane Kiffin, one of the best offensive minds in the country. And then when you look at the list of the guys West Virginia's bringing in, the majority of them have been G5 or FCS players. Do you think that's a problem?
Nope. Well, I think it's a problem that it's a problem that West Virginia didn't win with those players.
Yeah.
And I could go a couple different directions with this. So I guess I'll kind of just start. Yes, maybe we should brew some coffee because I got a lot of thoughts on that.
I might have to cut this out and make it its own show.
Yeah. I mean, okay. The obvious for me is if we've got players going to Ole Miss, pretty good. Missouri, pretty good. Kansas, who has had some success. I mean, you look at you just start running. So Ole Miss, Virginia Tech. I mean, you ran through the schools.
Illinois was a top 25 team this year.
Ohio State. Why couldn't Neil Brown win? Why could?
Yeah.
I mean,
I had not. I mean, I thought about that when I was looking at it, but that wasn't really my primary thought.
Yeah. So that was the thought.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that needs to be. Yeah.
Yeah. First thing that jumped into my mind, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on Neil Brown, but that was the first thought I ran through is we got all these players going to all these schools. Why couldn't we win here? So that leads to the next point is it's probably coaching. I mean, I would guess because one thing we know to be true is Neil Brown was a pretty good recruiter, right? And that's apparent.
I think that's obvious now.
That's apparent. It's obvious now. So what's next? Coaching? So that's my first thought. My second thought is, I'll be honest with you, I don't care, with all due respect to a local school here in town where you and I are at, I don't care if these kids all come from Concord University. If they can win football games and they're willing to be coached, I don't care. So it tells me that we took players that were good enough for Big 12, SEC, Big 10, ACC, and couldn't win. So what does it matter if these players come from Jacksonville State and UT-Chattanooga, and maybe it was a player at an ACC school that didn't get much time, or a tight end at a Big 10 school that hardly ever played? Who cares? I mean, we've kind of shown that results aren't necessarily at West Virginia over the last 6 years predicated on what talent you can get, right? It's coaching.
Yeah.
And as I sit here today in early January, I'm willing to roll the dice to say that Rich Rodriguez is going to get certain players.
Yep.
Not all are going to move the needle. Not all are going to get that excitement level so high you can't stand it. But I'm willing to bet that these guys are going to be coachable. They're going to play hard. They're going to know their assignments. I know times have changed. But West Virginia had some good players under Rich Rodriguez when he was at West Virginia the first time. Mm-hmm. But they built some foundation on some guys that just come in and worked their tails off. And so, a lot of thoughts on that, man. That's a good question. I guess if my initial thought was West Virginia should have won more football games. My second thought was I don't get too in January. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape over where they came from. You know, I mean, I'd go back to the portal the last couple of years where West Virginia took some players from. I'll be careful here because I don't want to give away certain names.
I get it.
But from power conferences, and it didn't translate. We felt really good about those, right? And it didn't translate to wins. And I know staffs have changed, and that's kind of my point. Yeah. West Virginia's had success in the portal from power conferences, power schools, and it didn't necessarily translate to wins. So how can we be upset if we're getting winning players from a lower level?
Yeah. Well said. And the response I had today on X, I kind of posed that question out to some people because it was on my mind. And it is, when you look at it as a fan on the surface and on paper, it looks bad, right? You see G5, 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 third string P4. And then you see, man, this guy left and went to Ohio State. Wow, he was really that good. Wow. You know what I mean? Why can't Rich Rod get that kind of guy? You know, that's the kind of thoughts that go through your head. But then I sit back and thought about it, and I'm paraphrasing one of my responses, but it was like, you know what? Even if theoretically, let's just say these players are not quite as good as some of the players that we're losing or that Neil Brown had on his roster. But I have enough faith in Rich Rod and what he's going to do from a coaching standpoint. I think it will not only offset any talent gap, I think it could actually exceed it.
Yeah.
Because of what you said. Number one, I think he might be better at evaluating people. Number one. Two, I think he's better at coaching them up.
Yep.
And like you said, he wants a certain type of guy. And I think the types of guys he wants are going to have more of the it factor, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Just the hard edge, I mean, I guess is the best way to put it. I think he's going to get his types of guys, coach them the way he wants to coach them. And they're going to have a mean streak to them. They're going to have a physicality to them and a toughness to them that they're probably going to win some games they shouldn't win, right? They're going to beat some teams that may be more talented on paper, but because they outplay them, they out hustle them, they out physical them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I don't know that Neil Brown's teams were able to do that necessarily.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just
and don't take our word for it. Take Rich Rod's word for it. You know, when he was hired at West Virginia, and when he met with the team, he said, if you're a slouch down kind of guy, you're not going to make it here. Mm-hmm. If you're going to get up in somebody's, you know what, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And then before he was introduced, he was on with McAfee, and he even said, this isn't for everybody. Yeah. I get it. This isn't for everybody. And you know what? That's probably had to change a little bit in who you go after with the NIL world. You know, when you owe people things like finances mm-hmm. and money, it kind of puts you in a little bit of a tough spot. And he's even talked about that, how when you have people giving these players a certain amount of money, it's hard to coach them a little bit, right? Because you're afraid they're going to leave. Then are you going to upset some people who are giving some money? And, you know, and he openly said, this isn't for everybody. And so I trust his evaluations. And I maybe just would point out too, this isn't the only batch of players, for lack of a better term, the West Virginia's bringing in. We know right now there was a linebacker / defensive end from Texas.
Yep.
I think
Justice Finkley.
I think that would move the needle a little bit for people out there.
Yep.
There's an offensive line. That's an area that needs addressed.
Two of them, actually.
That are out there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're counting, and I respectfully to him, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name, from Ole Miss.
Monteamani.
It's better than I would do. Now,
or Manatee-Amani. I'm not sure how
started on the offensive line, moved to defensive line. I don't quite know what their plan there is. Maybe just sticking him on the defensive line still. I would guess so. But you know, you look at Texas, Ole Miss, defensive back out of Nevada. They've been involved with some people.
Really good one, by the way. Second in the nation in passes defended or pass
really good. And I would expect they will do everything they can to try and lock him up.
Mm-hmm. Michael Coach Jr., is that the one you're talking about? I think it's his name.
So they're after some guys.
Yeah.
They are definitely after some guys that meet the criteria that maybe a lot of people are looking for.
And don't want to leave out Crew Wakely, a safety from BYU.
Yeah.
Who I've heard from talking to some BYU folks. They really like him. He wasn't. I think he was a starter some in his career, but he wasn't at the end. And but from what I was told from my BYU people, that they were really, really talented at safety. It was one of their stronger positions.
Yep.
And I mean, he was still in the rotation and getting snaps, but he just wasn't a starter.
Yeah, and Coach Jr., that was who I was talking about. But Robbie Martin, a player that so now you get into Texas, Ole Miss, NC State, Nevada, these BYU, as you noted. I think it's a good mix, right? And so I think when you look it all up, I think it is a good mix of players that he's targeting for specific reasons. And hey, we don't know how many. I mean, there are players that kind of have snuck under the radar. These are players we know about.
Right. The
Some of
Jalen
these,
Henderson, the quarterback, nobody even knew he was visiting.
nope,
He just popped up out of the blue.
And I probably believe that they wanted to keep that one under wraps a little bit. And so, I would probably advise, and this is hard for me to say because I kind of joke about it all the time that I want to be in the moment, but just assess a little bit of patience here to see what comes out. But I don't pay it much attention going all the way back to the original part of it, Couz. I just think that, well, again, different staffs, but West Virginia just was not able to win football games with talented players that are obviously powerful schools, are after talent. And so I'm willing to withhold some judgment there on these guys until we see it.
Yep. Okay. I like that answer. Made me feel better. And I was kind of leaning that way too, but I don't know. Sometimes I start getting, I start leaning on the negative side sometimes, man, and it's tough to overcome it. But let's go ahead and shift gears now and talk a little bit about coaching. Been some coaching announcements. Most of them had already been leaked. We found out that Rhett Rodriguez is now officially going to be the quarterback's coach. I've seen some a mixed bag of feelings around that. Some people feel like it's, a little bit of, I can't remember the word there, but, hiring his son, right? And maybe he wasn't qualified for the job or whatever. I'm not going to go down that road because I don't think Rich Rod would do it if he wasn't qualified. Honestly, he would give him an analyst job or something, or a GA position or something, right?
Yeah.
The young man, here's my opinion on it. The young man, and then I'll let you give yours, but the young man grew up in Rich Rodriguez's offense. Around it, he played in it for two different teams. He's been around it his entire life. He probably knows it as well as his dad, or at least darn near close to it, right? So who better to teach it?
Yep.
And again, he played quarterback. He played quarterback for him at Arizona, and he played quarterback for him at UL Monroe. He's going to know what it takes to play for him, so he'll know the type of players to recruit. And he's going to be able to talk to the players and tell them, hey, this is what he's going to expect. This is what you need to do. There's not everybody on the staff's going to be able to do that. He can, because he's lived it, right? Just because it's his son doesn't mean he's not a qualified coach. So I don't really buy into the fact. And you see, what about the Trickett family? I mean, look at there's so many examples throughout the Belichicks, so many examples throughout football where guys get jobs because of their family.
Yeah.
It's kind of part of the deal. I mean,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
I've got no issue with it. I think it would maybe it wouldn't pass the smell test if he was offensive coordinator.
Right.
But as you perfectly noted, Couz, and crazy enough, I don't have a ton more to add. I mean, he's played the position. He's been an analyst at the position. He knows the position, and he's been Rich Rodriguez's right-hand son. I'm not saying man, right-hand son. And so if anybody knows what he's looking for, it's Rhett Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget, he's going to have some people beside of him too that are going to. And generally, when you get into a quarterback's coach or safeties coach or whatever, I mean, those are, I don't want to call them entry level, but those are where a lot of guys. I think Tyler Allen got his first start there as a bump up onto the staff, and so don't have an issue with it. I tell you what I think. I think that Rich Rodriguez knows he needs to win at West Virginia. I think Rich Rodriguez wants to win at West Virginia. And because of those two things, I think that if Rich Rodriguez felt like there was somebody else he could bring in as a quarterbacks coach that was, I don't want to say more qualified, but could bring more to the table, I think he goes that route. I don't think this was just a handout. And so, again, I don't have a problem with it. I think it would raise an eyebrow for me if it was an offensive coordinator or something to that effect. But yeah, to me, it's much to do about nothing. I don't think it's a big deal.
Agreed.
And I've seen some of that, and I just think that they're just kind of tying the two together. That there's an open spot, and it's his son. Maybe something will probably. I'm not buying that.
Yep. And the other announcements were. Let me find it. Pat Kirkland is a special teams coordinator. Full disclosure, I don't know enough about Pat Kirkland to form an opinion. I'm just going to assume, he and Rich have worked together for quite a while. So, you know, and then Rod West hires cornerback coach out of Appalachian State. That was an interesting one. I didn't see that one coming. What were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, good recruiter, a good coach. Have some ties to Zach Alley. So again, these all were kind of meshing in some sort of way. And so, and that's already kind of evident in his recruiting process. You're seeing, actually, I think you saw the three guys we talked about earlier, Perry and Walker and Carter, really hit it off apparently with Rod West. So you're kind of seeing that already. There's some talk that Appalachian State had two commitments. Their two highest rated commitments are coming to West Virginia. That's the word on social media, if you will. And so I think he's a good addition. I don't know if you plan to ask me about it, but I'm just thinking out loud about this coaching staff. To me, an interesting one is it appears that another Trickett is coming back to town. Travis Trickett. Be interested to see how that works.
I was going to ask you about it. Yep, I was going to ask you about it.
So it only took me 23 episodes to read your mind. Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not bad.
The safeties coach was leaked too, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the guy's name. It hasn't been officially announced yet, though. But apparently, it's and maybe you can remember his name, Jonathan. But he coached safeties at Boise State for a while. I think I'm drawing a complete blank. But anyway, it is what it is. But it'll be announced probably the next day or two. But yeah, Trickett's role hasn't been announced, but he is coming back. I mean, only thing left. Well, I thought the only thing left was going to be offensive coordinator, but from what I'm hearing, there's going to be a lot more coaches than we are typically used to seeing. So, who knows what he's going to be doing? I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking out loud. I would imagine there would be a decent title here. I mean, Travis is a guy that's had some success along the way. He's had some offensive coordinator, QB coach, Coastal Carolina. And so it would be hard for me, although he's looking for a job, it'd be hard for me to think that maybe it's just an analyst type thing. So be curious to see. Maybe it's offensive coordinator by title / pass game specialist. They can tweak this however they want. But
he's an awesome recruiter, though.
He's a great recruiter. I don't think it needs to be said, but that's a football family. He's a Mountaineer. He's been here. He knows this state.
This will be his third time.
Yeah, and so
and he's an alum, isn't he? Or at least he's from the state, I think. He grew up because his dad coached here.
But just somebody that West Virginia fans should be really excited it's coming back home. I hated when he left the last time.
I did too. But he went for a better opportunity, and you couldn't blame him for it. But I thought it was a huge loss, honestly. His ability to recruit Florida was a huge benefit to Coach Brown and that staff, in my opinion.
Yep. So I think the staff's coming together, Couz. I really do.
Yep. I do too. I like it. And at the end of the day, I mean, your position coaches matter. Don't get me wrong, but you've got to trust the head coach, and in this, and in this case, you've got to trust the DC and Zach Alley to bring in the guys he can work with. Some of these are guys he's coached against, so he knows how good they are. Guys he's recruited against, and by the way, those two Appalachian State guys you mentioned, the recruits, if I'm not mistaken, Jonathan, they had Power 4 opportunities, but chose to go to Appalachian State instead. So it's not like these guys are scrubs that we're talking about here.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
At least that's I'm pretty sure I read or heard that somewhere in the last day or two. And I think one of them may have even been on the verge of being a 4-star recruit. Pretty highly rated kid, but was choosing to go to Appalachian State because of his relationship with Coach West. So that shows you the type of recruiter he is.
Yep.
Now we're going to shift gears and talk about a different sport. The round ball, hoops. West Virginia coming off a tough loss where they were flat against Arizona, lost by 19 points. What were your thoughts, Jonathan, on that loss to Arizona? And do you think this team's in trouble?
I don't think they're in trouble. No. Bad loss, but not really. Bad the way it ended, right? I mean, let's just back up just a little bit. I felt like early on in the first half, West Virginia couldn't buy a bucket. Arizona shot the ball pretty well. They were sharp all night, actually. West Virginia, have to give them credit. They come out second half with some energy and actually fought back. I think they got that down to a 4 or 5 point lead.
They did
in the second half. Then it just kind of spiraled out of control a little bit towards the end. So I will say, even though I'm not questioning whether the game was in doubt, to me, it seemed apparent that Arizona was in control throughout, but it wasn't a complete blowout as the final score maybe indicated. I would say a couple things can be true at the same time. Number one, I don't think that the sky's fallen. I don't think they're in trouble, but I do think there's a little bit of concern. West Virginia looked tired. And when you are a little bit of a depleted roster and you have some quick bounce backs against some pretty darn good basketball teams, that fatigue shows a little bit more. You and I kind of talked during the game a little bit. Even Javon Small just seemed a little tired. He seemed that he got to a point where he just felt like he maybe had to do a little bit more. And he's a great player. But that's what happens when you get a little fatigued and you start pressing a little bit. But I'd also just add, Couz, that Arizona's a pretty dang good basketball team. Throw that record out the window. They're now 3-0 in the Big 12. It's important to note that they came over and played a game before West Virginia. They actually went to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati, I believe, was ranked. Cincinnati was almost top 15 in the country earlier on in the season. And they went to Cincinnati, and won that game, and then came to West Virginia. So they're 3-0 in the conference now, but they're 2-0 on their trip, and they beat two pretty decent basketball teams in Cincinnati and West Virginia.
Both of them were ranked at the time they beat them.
Absolutely, and so I think what happened was West Virginia's played pretty good basketball, and people knew that West Virginia had beat Arizona earlier in the year, and just thought. You beat them once, you're playing good, you get them at home, should beat them again. And that's not the case. This league, it's a battle every night. And, you can't take anybody for granted. I don't care if their record was, I think it was 8-5. It doesn't matter. It's college hoops, man. I mean, you look, I know we're recording this the day after, but you look across college basketball last night. Tennessee, I believe, was the number one team in the country, went to Florida. They got manhandled, man. Does that mean Tennessee's terrible? No. Kentucky, ranked highly, went to Georgia, got beat on the road. And they were down 10, 12, 13 points in that game, got beat. Does that mean Kentucky's bad? No. I'm not putting West Virginia in that category, but I am saying that West Virginia has just as good a wins as a Tennessee, a Kentucky, and some of those schools. So I said on X this morning, and I'll probably just kind of wrap up with this on that thought is I saw people saying, Couz, when West Virginia went to Lawrence and beat Kansas, this was a Final Four team. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
But then I also saw people after last night's loss to Arizona say this team would be lucky to win 2 more conference games. I don't believe that either. Yeah. I think you can be somewhere in the middle. And if your expectation is to not lose and to not have nights where it just doesn't click in this conference, you're going to set yourself up for some miserable nights watching hoops because it's going to happen in this league.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I kind of had a gut feeling going into that game last night that it wasn't going to happen. I don't know why. I thought it was time. I mean, they had won 7 in a row, or six or seven in a row.
Yeah, and in fairness, you told me that really early on in the game that you just had that feeling.
Yeah, it wasn't their night, man. And I've played sports in I didn't play at their level, but I played in high school, and I had nights, man, regardless of the sport or days, where it's like nothing. The ball moved. It's like in basketball, I used the example on my live show. The basket looked tiny.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like your opponents are moving 100 miles an hour, and you feel like you're moving 5. I mean, it just for whatever. And sometimes there's no explanation for it. I mean, I remember games when I was in middle school where it's like I kept making mistakes, like mistakes I hadn't made all year. And I couldn't, and I was like, what's wrong with me? It's like and it just gets in your head, and then it spirals, right? And that can catch on. And I've had nights where the entire team did that. I mean, I think anybody who's played sports has experienced that at some point. You know, it's just, it is what it is.
It was one of those nights where everything was a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
For West Virginia had to work hard for everything. And it seemed that everything kind of came pretty easy for Arizona. Just one of those nights, man.
Yeah. And you add in, you know, they only had 7 guys available to play any significant minutes. They, you know, they're playing a gauntlet of a schedule with very little break. They, you know, they've had to do a lot of traveling. It just, you know, we're having a snowstorm. I'm sure that probably didn't help things. And I know that's not an excuse because the other team's dealing with it too, but you get my point. It just adds up over time. All the different things, you know, the crowd wasn't very good. So that the crowd couldn't help them last night because people were snowed in and couldn't get to the game. So it just wasn't, it's like there was just so many things adding up that you just like, you know what, at some point this team's going to lose a game. Like they cannot keep, because every time they'd win a game, you'd be like, how in the world do they keep winning these games with all these injuries? They can't keep doing that forever. It's just not, it would be illogical for them to keep winning games with all this adversity hitting them in the face.
Yeah. But I do think that at some point, I think injuries are going to catch up to them a little bit. They have to.
They will for sure.
You know, it's extremely difficult to get, and I understand why. But it's extremely difficult to get any information out of the staff in regards to availability. And so until we hear otherwise, because I think we have to assume you're probably not going to see Tucker DeVries again. Until we hear otherwise, I'm going to believe that Jaden Stone is probably not going to suit up this season. Amani Hansberry has been limited at times. He's battled his own injury, and if I recall correctly, he kind of had a little bit of an issue late last night. KJ Tanner missed the game. Is that a one-game thing? Is that going to prolong into 2 or 3 weeks? Again, we have no clue, and I'm not been negative about this, but we're just not getting the updates to kind of keep us in the loop. You start running through some players here, you're a one rolled ankle away from being in a serious problem from a Javon Small or an Oconee or somebody. Mm-hmm. You're stretched so thin right now. you can't even take somebody to have a stomach bug. I mean, so I think my biggest concern right now is, as crazy as it sounds, not the schedule, because I actually look at that as opportunity. In terms of their NCAA tournament chances, and maybe we can talk about that. But my biggest concern is the health of this basketball team, and how long can you go stretched as thin as you are?
Yeah, I agree. It's my biggest concern too, because I think that, and we'll just dovetail that into the tournament conversation, because I think it ties together, Jonathan. And real quick before I get there, I want to apologize. I've been looking at my phone a lot, but I keep getting these hints that we're going to see more football commits here soon. So I keep trying to check to see if news is coming, is breaking. But as far back to the basketball, if the injury bug doesn't, if they don't get some relief from that, if they don't get Stone back, or if Hansberry and Tenner don't come back, right, or they don't get back to 100% soon, like you said, one rolled ankle, one flu, and we all know at least once a year, at least when Huggins was here, there would be at least one game a year where almost half the team would have the flu. It happened almost every year, and so that hasn't happened yet. It's just, but if that happens and it starts to snowball, then I'm going to be extremely concerned. Then I'll say they might be in trouble. But right now, I agree with you. I don't think they're in trouble. I don't think we should overreact to one game. I do still think this is an NCAA tournament team. I'm like you. I don't think they're a Final Four team. I don't think they're going to compete for a national championship. But can they get into the tournament and win one or two games? Absolutely, I think they can. I think if you can go on the road and beat Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse, and you can beat Gonzaga, and you can beat an Arizona team who has shown they do have a lot of talent, and you can beat a good Georgetown team. Georgetown's good too. I don't think they've lost a game since they played us. If you can win those games, you can compete with anybody, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you're playing your A game, and if you're healthy, and if things are clicking for you. But the problem is the health part, and things are clicking. And back to the game, I mean, you were talking about things being a struggle. I mean, West Virginia is just, I think fatigue had to be a factor, because they didn't have the bounce they normally have. They weren't moving well laterally and getting, rotating well. They weren't getting every single show I've done on this team, almost, I've talked about how good they do at getting back on defense. They were one of the top transition defense teams in the country going into that game. And they did not get back on defense. Several times in that game, they did not get back on defense and stop transition baskets. And that's just uncharacteristic. They were doing a lot of uncharacteristic things, but I think it all ties in. I think fatigue was part of it. I think frustration might be part of it. They know their teammates keep getting hurt. That's got to weigh on you a little bit, I would think.
It does. And I also think it's in direct correlation with having a bad shooting night.
Yep.
That transition defense. Yep. We were watching the game last night and noticed that transition defense was directly correlated, because so many missed outside shots led to long rebounds. And to Arizona's credit, they were able to get that ball and push it up the floor pretty quick. And when you're tired and fatigued, you're not able to catch back up. You're even more behind the 8 ball. And so, fatigue definitely played a factor. I think you maybe talk to me off air about how they're going to get a day off. They're going to get rest. But it's not going to get any easier. This Big 12, I mean, you're going to go to Colorado, who's had a good year, who I believe right now is actually playing. They've got a good season going, and
they're 9-4 right now, so they're not.
They lost to UCF. Lost to UCF by 1, 75-74. They were winning earlier. I wanted to check that.
They beat you. They beat UConn. They got a bigger win on their resume than West Virginia does. They beat UConn earlier in the year. When they were the number 2 team in the country. So,
and that's not an easy place to go. It's a long travel for this team. Yep. Altitude's a little bit of an issue. But I talked about this earlier. It's opportunities, right? I mean, if you can go on to Colorado, who's got resume, you've got Iowa State. You've got some other schools in this conference that are going to be Cincinnati's a good team. You have opportunities to earn. So you're sitting at 11 wins. And while you would love to get to 20, you almost have to feel pretty good if you can get to that 17, 18 win range with the resume that you already have, with the resume that you're able to build on. I mean, if you can get another 5 to 7 wins, and I'm not saying it's easy by no means,
right?
But that's on the minimum level. If you can get another 5 wins, 7 wins, 6 wins in this conference, odds are you're going to beat some pretty darn good basketball teams, right, to get to there. So you're going to build on an already impressive resume. So I still think the NCAA tournament is in reach for this team. But I'll tell you what I told some people today on X. If I'd told you before the season tipped, 14 games in, this team was going to be 11-3, would you take that?
Absolutely, I would.
I would. And so that's not even kind of talking about how, so yeah, feel pretty good about this team regardless of how it stands.
Agreed. That's why last night I didn't get – look, was I disappointed? Yeah, I was disappointed, but I didn't get frustrated. I didn't get mad because, like, first of all, like I told you, I kind of saw it come. I didn't see him getting beat that bad, but I did have a feeling it was going to happen. And it's just college basketball, man. Teams don't usually reel off 7, 8, 9 games in a row. It's very rare for that to happen, and they were kind of due, for lack of a better term. Now I hate that it happened at home. I'd rather it happen on the road, but still, I mean, you've got that win at Kansas to kind of make up for it, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at the resume, so I don't think it hurt them all that much. I really don't think it hurt them too much, because I think number one, I think Arizona's going to keep winning a lot of games. And I think when we get to the end of the year, Arizona's going to be back fairly. They're going to be ranked again pretty soon, in my opinion.
Yep, they are. And again, I said earlier, in this conference, you're going to have teams. West Virginia, it ended up becoming a little bit closer, but West Virginia flat out manhandled Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State beat a pretty good Kansas State team last night.
Mm-hmm.
So every night's going to be something. We know going into each game, it's a roller coaster.
Yep.
And sometimes you're going to be on the top, sometimes you're going to be on the bottom. But I don't think the sky's falling with this team.
Yep, absolutely, it's not.
And I'll tell you one reason why too. The main reason why I don't think Coach DeVries is going to allow it.
That's you took the words right out of my mouth.
I mean, I mean, they've played 14 games, but it's not taking me 14 games to buy in. He's not going to allow it, and I'm not going to say we won't see another performance like we did last night, but I'll be shocked if we see one relatively soon. So
yeah, I saw there are already articles being written and people posting on social media about should he get a contract extension already. 14 games into his tenure.
When didn't Tommy Lloyd, Arizona's coach, make that comment?
Yeah,
it kind of unprompted, right?
Yeah,
I didn't hear it, but like I saw on social media, I think it was pretty much unprompted. Said he'd go ahead and give it to him.
Yeah, he said if I was his agent, I would be getting one right now, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but I didn't hear it either. I was just going by what I read on X, but yeah, and I think somebody in the West Virginia media today wrote an article about it. If I'm not mistaken, I have to go back and see who it was. I just kind of saw the headline.
The good thing for West Virginia is he doesn't seem to be a job hunter. Mm-mm. He seems to be extremely selective. He was at Drake. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but it's fun. He was a lot of success for a long time at Drake. He had multiple opportunities to leave. Yep. He was very selective in where he wants to be. He likes that small town college town atmosphere. He's not just somebody that's going to jump at any other opportunity. Now, what he is going to do is probably demand a pay raise or get a pay raise.
Yeah.
But the job he's done in such a short period of time is remarkable.
Agreed. And fans are already worried about losing him already. Like I see fans on social media like, man, we're not going to be holding on to this guy. He's too good. But like you said, he does seem to be loyal. And he was an assistant at Creighton for forever. I forget when I saw that graphic the other night, I was like, wow, I didn't realize he was at Creighton that long. Like I'm sure he probably had opportunities to leave and become a head coach somewhere at some point, but he didn't want to leave he's the type that's not going to leave for just any job. Yeah. He wants it to be the right job, which he said that in his opening press conference. But, and of course, a lot of coaches say that, but I think you can kind of look at his career and he's lived it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, he's not going to be, everybody wants more money, but I don't think money's what drives him,
No, he was extremely successful at Drake and could have left easily for an opportunity.
Yeah.
But thank goodness he's here and hopefully it's just it stinks to have that. It's funny, right? Because it stinks to have that coach who's winning so much that you're scared to death somebody's going to take him. But you certainly don't want to have the coach that can't win anything and nobody wants him.
Yep. Well, that's what I've heard comments before. It may have been during the Zach Alley stuff. I've heard it multiple times, but the most recent one I think was during, they were like, well, if he does good, he's just going to leave in 2 years. I'm like, well, good. That means we had 2 good seasons.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. What would you rather do? 6 years of what we just went through?
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Dana Holgorsen because Dana Holgorsen, he used to lose coaches. If you remember, he would have coaches leave every year to go somewhere else. And he had some good coaches on his staff. If you look back at the staff he had, most of those guys have moved on to better jobs, or a lot of them. But he would always say, if you've got coaches that are leaving for other jobs, it means you're doing something right.
Yep.
It means you're hiring the right people.
Yep.
And you're, helping them be successful to where they get recognized, right? It's, a coach's job is to do more than just coach the players. You're also, to a degree, coaching your assistant coaches. And it's just a cycle, man. And look, we're not, I love West Virginia. I'm obviously a huge fan, but we're not a program like Ohio State or somebody that we can't pay our coaches $10 million a year. So we're probably going to lose coaches when they win a lot. It is what it is.
I'd rather be 11-3 with the resume and every blue blood in America wanting Darren DeVries versus 3-11 and people laughing at you that you made the wrong hire.
Absolutely. Well said, brother. Well said. All right, Jonathan, real quick, man, before we call it a night, let everybody know where to find your work.
Yeah, I'm on X at Jonathan K. Martin, Jonathan K. Martin, in case you're listening and not watching. I've always say it's pretty much a one-stop shop. It's all right there on social media. So a lot of links to this show and your channel and a lot of West Virginia Big 12 type stuff. So come enjoy the fun.
Yep. And you can find me at Couz 206 at Couz, Couz 206. Also, I need to start advertising this more, but my Hoops from the Hills basketball channel, you can find me the Twitter account for that at Hoops_Heels 304. It's at Hoops_Heels 304. Also, come check out the Hoops from the Hills YouTube channel. Check out Couz's Corner. Subscribe, do all those things that YouTubers like you to do. And if you're listening to this on podcast platforms, please leave us a 5-star review. That really helps us. We would really appreciate it. And be sure to check out Jonathan's work and go subscribe to him over on X. He puts out a lot of content. But we really appreciate you guys tuning in for another week of the Golden Blue Breakdown Show. We look forward to being with you again next week. And until next time, we're out. Let's go Mountaineers.